It was an ordinary day on Earth. The sun rose as it always did, casting a warm golden light over the cities and forests, the rivers and mountains. People were going about their daily routines, school children rushing to class, workers heading to their jobs, families enjoying breakfast. Life seemed peaceful, calm, and predictable. No one could have known that, in the blink of an eye, everything was about to change. At exactly 8:00 a.m., the unexpected happened. The peaceful silence of Earth was shattered by a strange signal. It came through the government's communication system, loud and clear, from an unknown source. At first, no one understood what it was. It was a deep, echoing voice that carried through the airwaves. "We are the Galactic Empire. We demand Earth's immediate surrender. You will be ours. Prepare for destruction." The message echoed through the world's news stations, and panic spread faster than wildfire. People looked at each other in disbelief. Earth was not prepared for such a challenge. The Galactic Empire was known across the galaxy as one of the most powerful forces ever to exist. They ruled over countless planets, and their fleet was feared by all. They had crushed civilizations far more advanced than Earth's. The idea that they were now targeting Earth seemed impossible, like something out of a science fiction movie. The governments of Earth were thrown into a frenzy. Emergency meetings were called. Military leaders gathered. The President of the United States, along with leaders from every major country, met with scientists, strategists, and military officers to discuss the situation. It was clear that no one had ever imagined something like this happening. Earth had always been a peaceful planet, isolated in the vast universe, unaware of the dangers that lay beyond the stars. "We are not ready," the President said, his face pale. "Our weapons are outdated. Our defenses are weak. This is a force we've never seen before." Military leaders nodded grimly. They had no way to match the Empire's advanced weaponry or their massive fleet of warships. But no one on Earth was willing to give up without a fight. "We may not be ready, but we can't just surrender," one officer said, his voice firm. "Humanity has always found a way to survive, no matter the odds." And so, despite the odds stacked against them, Earth's leaders decided to respond. They sent a message back to the Galactic Empire, letting them know they would not surrender. Humanity, they said, would fight back. The response was simple, yet filled with defiance. "We will not bow to you. Prepare for war." The message was sent. Now, Earth's military began to prepare for the unimaginable. News spread quickly across the planet that war was coming, and that Earth's survival was at stake. People gathered in large groups, watching the news, sharing their fears, but also showing determination. They had no choice but to stand together. Across the globe, emergency measures were put into place. People were told to stay indoors, and military bases were put on high alert. A sense of urgency filled the air. But even though Earth's leaders were preparing for the worst, they still couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness. The Galactic Empire's fleet was known to be unstoppable. No one could defeat them. Everyone knew that the Empire was ruthless, with weapons that could destroy entire planets in the blink of an eye. On the ground, everyday people were struggling to understand what was happening. They had never been involved in anything like this before. Some were terrified, others were angry, and many were simply confused. But one thing was clear: Earth was being challenged, and its future was uncertain. At the same time, high above the planet, the Empire's fleet was already making its way toward Earth. Massive ships, their engines glowing bright against the dark void of space, moved toward the small blue planet. They were led by the Empire's greatest general, a ruthless warrior known only as Xerox. Xerox had conquered dozens of planets, and the Galactic Empire had never lost a battle under his command. His fleet was larger than anything Earth had ever seen, and he had the latest technology at his disposal. Xerox's voice echoed over the comms, a cold and calculated tone. "Prepare to make Earth the next addition to the Empire's collection. These humans think they can stand against us. We will show them their place." He was confident. Why wouldn't he be? The Galactic Empire had never lost. Earth, with its primitive weapons and outdated technology, was no match for them. Back on Earth, military scientists worked day and night to upgrade their defenses. They were determined to find any way to even the playing field. But the truth was, they knew they were facing a force unlike anything they had ever encountered. They had no idea what to expect, and no one was sure if Earth's fleet would be able to defend against the coming attack. As the days passed, the fear in the air grew thicker. But there was also something else, something that even the Empire had not expected. A quiet strength, a fire that burned in the hearts of the people, from the military to the average citizen. Humanity had never been tested like this, but they were not about to give up without a fight. They would prove that they were not weak, not helpless. The challenge had been issued. The Galactic Empire had dared to face Earth's fleet, and Earth would respond in kind, with everything it had. The question was no longer whether the Empire would defeat them. The question was how long humanity could hold on, and what they would do to fight back. This was just the beginning. The hum of Earth's preparations echoed through every corner of the globe. The early moments of panic had shifted into urgency, as humanity realized that the fight for their survival had already begun. Earth's leaders and military forces scrambled to strengthen their defenses, pushing their technologies to the limit, trying to create anything that might stand a chance against the Galactic Empire's overwhelming power. In every major city, the news broadcast was on a loop, warning people to stay inside. Panic was still in the air, but there was a noticeable shift. People began to gather in groups, sharing their thoughts, ideas, and hope. Ordinary citizens, who had never imagined a war would touch their lives, found themselves talking about how they could help in the struggle. Some volunteered for military service, while others used their knowledge and skills to contribute to Earth's defense efforts. Even children, though scared, understood that something huge was happening. In schools, teachers tried to explain what was going on in a way that made sense to their students, but the weight of it was heavy on everyone's shoulders. How could Earth stand against a force that had crushed planets far more advanced than theirs? The question lingered in every mind, unanswered. Behind closed doors, the leaders of the world worked tirelessly. The UN held emergency sessions with global leaders, trying to form a united front. Earth had never faced such a situation before, and no one knew what to expect. The fear of the unknown was terrifying. But despite that fear, a new sense of unity began to form. They were all in this together, and that meant something. The planet's divisions, its differences, seemed small in the face of this enormous threat. For the first time in history, Earth's nations set aside their disagreements, focused on one goal: survival. Meanwhile, deep within the military command centers, scientists and engineers labored to develop new weapons and strategies. The resources they had were limited compared to the Empire's fleet, but humanity's ingenuity was not something to be underestimated. They worked with what they had, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Keep it simple but effective, one of the lead engineers instructed his team. We don't have time to build something fancy. We need something that can strike quickly and leave an impact. Across the world, similar conversations took place, and the focus turned to creating faster, more agile ships, weapons that could be used in surprise attacks, and defense systems capable of withstanding the Empire's firepower. Earth's military, though small in comparison to the Empire's, had one advantage that the Empire hadn't counted on: the element of surprise. In space, the Empire's fleet was drawing nearer. Their ships were enormous, sleek, and menacing, each one a powerful weapon of destruction. As the Empire's warships moved toward Earth, they covered vast stretches of space, moving with ruthless precision. Their size alone struck fear into the hearts of those watching from Earth's Defense Command. Their plan was clear. They would arrive, destroy Earth's defenses, and claim the planet as their own without a second thought. However, what the Galactic Empire didn't know was that humanity wasn't going to give up easily. Earth's fleet, though smaller and less technologically advanced, was now filled with an unshakable resolve. The people of Earth understood the importance of this battle. For them, this wasn't just about fighting for their homes or their families. It was about showing the entire galaxy that Earth would never back down. The moment of reckoning was drawing closer. Earth's defense forces were ready, and the first wave of their fleet was already positioned in orbit around the planet, awaiting orders. They were not the mightiest fleet, but they were determined. There was a fire in their hearts, a passion that came from the knowledge that they were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of humanity itself. As Earth's fleet waited, the tension grew. The Empire's ships, though far off in the distance, were visible through the advanced telescopes used to track them. Humanity could see the size of the incoming force, and it was a sight that made even the bravest among them shudder. The Galactic Empire's fleet was moving toward Earth with the confidence of a predator that knew its prey was already cornered. Yet deep within Earth's military command, a quiet determination was beginning to take root. They had prepared as much as they could. There was no going back. All they could do now was face the Empire head-on and give everything they had to protect their planet. "We're ready," the military commander said, standing in front of the vast map of Earth's orbit. "We may be small, but we've got the spirit of humanity behind us." The countdown to battle had begun. With each passing minute, Earth's defenders steeled themselves for the inevitable. Every person involved, soldiers, scientists, engineers, and even the civilians helping in any way they could, knew that this was more than just a battle for survival. It was a statement to the universe that Earth would not be conquered, that humanity was far stronger than anyone could imagine. As the first ships of the Galactic Empire entered Earth's atmosphere, humanity's fight began in earnest. The tension had reached its peak. Earth's forces had no choice but to face this overwhelming threat head-on, with every ounce of strength they could muster. The world held its breath, not knowing what was to come, but ready to stand firm, united against the mighty force that loomed on the horizon. Would Earth's fleet be able to hold their ground? Or was this the beginning of the end? Only time would tell. The stage was set for a battle that would change the course of history. The question was no longer if Earth could survive. It was whether humanity could outsmart the seemingly invincible Galactic Empire. The calm before the storm had arrived, and Earth's forces waited anxiously in orbit, watching as the first wave of the Galactic Empire's fleet approached. The atmosphere was thick with tension. People across the planet could only watch, hoping their leaders had prepared for what was to come. The Empire's warships were a terrifying sight, their enormous, dark forms blocking out the stars as they moved steadily toward Earth. Each ship was armed to the teeth, designed to overwhelm any force that dared challenge them. Inside the control room of Earth's Central Command, General Maria Ramirez stood stoically in front of the massive monitor. The digital display showed the Empire's fleet moving ever closer, their massive size dwarfing Earth's own ships. Her team worked frantically, sending final adjustments to the Earth fleet's weapons systems and coordinating their movements. The tension was palpable. There was no time for second-guessing now. "Ready all units," she said, her voice steady, betraying none of the nervousness she felt inside. "We will make our stand here. We cannot let them think we will give up without a fight. No matter what happens, we fight for our planet." The decision had already been made. Earth's fleet, though vastly outnumbered, would engage the Empire head-on. Their strategy was simple yet dangerous. Use their speed and agility to outmaneuver the massive warships of the Empire, making surprise strikes where possible. The Empire might have overwhelming firepower, but humanity had the one thing they hadn't counted on: resourcefulness. As the countdown began, Maria's eyes scanned the images of the approaching ships. They were closer now, the sheer size of the enemy fleet unmistakable. If Earth's military had any doubts before, they were gone now. The time had come to defend their home, no matter the cost. "Engage," Maria commanded. With that, Earth's fleet sprang into action. The ships, though smaller and less powerful, moved with swift precision. Each vessel was designed for agility, and the human pilots were skilled in maneuvering through tight spaces, taking advantage of every opening. The Empire's ships were formidable, but they weren't built for speed. Earth's fleet, on the other hand, had the advantage in that department, and they intended to use it to the fullest. The first shots were fired. The Empire's advanced weaponry was unleashed in a spectacular show of light, but Earth's forces were ready. Smaller, faster ships dodged the initial blasts, moving in close for hit-and-run attacks on the Empire's weaker points. They didn't have the firepower to match the Empire's full might, but they made up for it with precision and speed. The Empire's fleet, though formidable, wasn't prepared for this kind of attack. Their warships were equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they had underestimated the determination of humanity. The humans knew that they couldn't win in a straight-up battle, but they could fight with everything they had, and that's exactly what they did. The first wave of the Empire's ships began to falter. Earth's fighters, working in coordinated groups, found weak spots in the Empire's defenses and exploited them. Missiles struck Empire ships, sending them into a chaotic spiral. While it wasn't enough to destroy the mighty warships, it caused enough damage to make the Empire rethink their approach. The commander of the Empire's fleet, General Zarok, watched the unfolding battle from the bridge of his flagship. His expression remained unreadable, but deep inside, a small seed of doubt began to grow. He had underestimated these humans. He had thought their technology and tactics were primitive, that they would buckle under the pressure of his fleet's might. But Earth's ships had a resilience to them, a stubbornness he hadn't anticipated. "Send the next wave," Zarok ordered. His voice was cold, but there was a flicker of annoyance behind his words. The Empire's fleet was built to destroy, to crush all opposition in its path. But this was different. These humans were fighting with something beyond technology. They were fighting with heart, with a passion that Zarok could not easily dismiss. The second wave of the Empire's fleet arrived just as Earth's forces were beginning to feel the strain. They had inflicted damage, yes, but the enemy was far from defeated. The Empire's ships were relentless, their firepower overwhelming. The battle intensified, and the scale of the conflict grew larger with each passing second. Earth's fleet was pushing back, but the odds were beginning to shift. In the midst of the chaos, a message came through to General Maria Ramirez. It was from one of Earth's top strategists, a civilian engineer who had been working on advanced weaponry for the Earth fleet. "We've found something. It's not much, but it might work," the message read. "There's a vulnerability in the Empire's energy shield system. If we can direct a concentrated blast at the center of the fleet, we might be able to breach their defenses, even if just for a moment. It's risky, but it's our best shot." Maria didn't hesitate. "Get the data to all commanders. We need to hit them where it hurts." As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet adjusted their tactics. The focus shifted. Instead of trying to engage the Empire's massive ships head-on, they began to target the weak spots in the fleet's energy shields. They didn't have much time before the Empire would regroup and unleash a devastating counterattack, but this new plan gave them hope. For the first time since the battle began, the tide started to turn in humanity's favor. But just as they gained ground, a new threat appeared. A massive ship, far larger than anything Earth had seen before, entered the fray. It was the flagship of the Galactic Empire, and its size was enough to cast a shadow over the battlefield. It opened fire with a barrage of energy blasts that decimated everything in its path. Earth's forces were stunned. Even their most agile ships struggled to avoid the onslaught. It was a turning point. The fate of humanity seemed to hang in the balance. Could Earth's fleet find the strength to withstand this new threat, or would the Empire's might finally crush their resistance once and for all? As General Ramirez watched the Empire's flagship loom closer, she knew one thing for sure. Earth had no choice but to fight on. This was their planet. This was their home. And they would not go down without a fight. The battle was far from over. The intense battle had reached its boiling point. Earth's fleet was battered and bruised, yet their determination remained unwavering. The Empire's new flagship, a gargantuan ship with shields that could absorb even the most powerful of Earth's weaponry, towered over the battlefield. Its mere presence seemed to cast a shadow over Earth's forces, but it had only intensified their resolve. General Maria Ramirez watched her screens, every number, every signal, every pulse of the ship's systems flashing across her vision. The damage to the fleet was mounting. Some ships were already on fire, others drifting in space, abandoned by their crews. Yet, in the midst of the destruction, something remarkable happened. The resilience of humanity began to shine through. "Report," Maria barked, her voice cutting through the comms. "General, our fighters are engaging the flagship head-on. We've managed to get in a few hits, but we need more firepower," came the reply from the tactical officer. Maria clenched her fists. The flagship's shields were nearly impenetrable, but there had to be a way to break through. A plan formed in her mind, a desperate plan that could turn the tide of the battle, but it would require great sacrifice. Her gaze shifted to her personal ship, a sleek vessel designed for fast maneuvers. There was one last option left, one final play, but it was a gamble. She turned to the communications officer. "Patch me through to all fleet commanders." As the connection was made, Maria's face appeared on every screen across the fleet. "This is General Maria Ramirez," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "I'm about to give you a new directive. We have one chance to break through the Empire's defenses. It's going to require all of us to make a coordinated strike, and we have to do it now." The fleet commanders listened closely, hanging on her every word. Maria didn't waste time with pleasantries or explanations. She knew what needed to be done. "We've detected a small, vulnerable spot in the flagship's shields," she said. "If we focus our fire on that exact point, we may be able to breach it for a few seconds, just long enough for us to take out the flagship's main weapon array. Once we do that, the flagship will be crippled, and we can finally fight back." She paused, the weight of what she was about to say hanging in the air. "But here's the catch. We will need to use everything we have. No second chances. We'll have to commit fully to this attack, and once we do, we won't have the resources left to survive a counterattack. Are you all ready to make that sacrifice?" A silence hung over the fleet as the commanders processed her words. Then, one by one, each commander spoke, their voices firm and united. "We are ready, General." It was decided. The last play would be made. Maria's heart pounded in her chest as she turned to her own crew. "Prepare my ship for the strike," she said. "We're going in." The entire fleet shifted into position, their ships lining up in formation. It was a delicate operation. Any misstep could result in failure, and the Empire's counterattacks would be devastating if they were given the chance to recover. But if they succeeded, it would all be worth it. As the fleet drew closer to the Empire's flagship, the first wave of fighters launched, diving toward the flagship at full speed. Their small but nimble ships darted between the incoming fire, dodging blasts, and unleashing everything they had on the weak point Maria had identified. Explosions rippled across the flagship's shields, but they held firm. Maria's ship joined the assault, her fighter weaving between the barrage of enemy fire. Her fingers danced across the controls as she locked onto the vulnerable point, the targeting system aligning perfectly. Her heart raced. Time was running out. If she didn't make this shot, the fleet would be doomed. Locking on target, the computer's calm voice announced. Maria exhaled sharply, her entire being focused on the task at hand. She pressed the firing button, and a burst of concentrated energy shot from her ship's weapons, striking the weak point with devastating force. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship's shields flickered, and a huge explosion erupted on its surface. The energy shield collapsed, revealing the massive ship's exposed underbelly, a momentary vulnerability. "Now, hit them with everything," Maria shouted. The fleet's remaining ships, including bombers and heavy artillery vessels, fired everything they had at the breach. Missiles, plasma rounds, and energy blasts rained down upon the flagship. The ship shuddered violently as its defensive systems failed, and its enormous guns fell silent. The flagship wasn't out yet. Its secondary systems kicked in, and it began to return fire. But the damage was done. The flagship was crippled. The tide had begun to turn. But just as Earth's forces began to celebrate, something unexpected happened. A massive rift opened in space, and out of it poured more ships than anyone had ever seen. The Empire wasn't just fighting with one fleet, they had brought reinforcements. "What is this?" one of the commanders asked, his voice full of disbelief. They were holding back. General Ramirez's face darkened. The reinforcements were led by a new warship, even more massive than the flagship that had been crippled. It was clear now. The Empire wasn't just testing Earth's defenses. They were planning for something far bigger, something more terrifying. "Prepare for a second wave," Maria ordered. "This battle is far from over. We're not giving up. Not now. Not ever." As Earth's fleet prepared for the next wave of attacks, Maria couldn't help but wonder, was humanity ready for what was coming next? Or had they just kicked a hornet's nest, and this was only the beginning of something far worse? The struggle was far from over, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. But one thing was certain, humans would never back down. They had already proven that much. The rift in space tore wider, revealing a vast armada that stretched out like a dark cloud descending upon Earth. The ships poured out of the rift, hundreds of them, their blackened hulls gleaming under the distant light of the stars. The sheer size of the new fleet was enough to make even the most seasoned officers aboard Earth's ships feel a cold shiver run down their spines. General Ramirez gripped the armrests of her command chair, the room vibrating slightly as the first shockwaves from the enemy ships hit the fleet. "We're outnumbered, General," one of her commanders said, his voice tense with disbelief. "We can't handle this." Maria didn't respond immediately. She was staring at the holographic display of the enemy fleet, analyzing their formation. It was unlike anything Earth had faced before. The Empire had sent more ships, sure, but this was something else entirely. There were battleships, destroyers, and dreadnoughts, but there were also vessels that appeared almost ghostly, like shadows that barely existed, their forms flickering in and out of the visual spectrum. "Set our course," Maria said, her voice sharp and resolute. "We're not backing down." Her command was met with nods of agreement from her officers, but the tension was palpable. This was no longer a fight for survival. This was war. Humanity's fight to preserve everything they had worked for. The fleet began to reposition, adjusting to the new threat. Maria's eyes flicked over to the nearby star chart, calculating the distance to the Empire's reinforcements. They had only minutes before the enemy ships reached striking distance. The fleet had to make a choice, face the new arrivals head-on or fall back to regroup. Maria wasn't one for retreat. "Target their largest ships," she ordered. "We take out the command vessels first. If we cripple their leadership, we can scatter the rest of the fleet." She was prepared to fight to the last, but she couldn't afford to make a mistake. With Earth's fleet already weakened from their earlier skirmishes with the flagship, the remaining ships were crucial for the defense. But Maria's mind was working quickly, calculating possible outcomes, and the only path to victory was an all-out assault. Earth's ships formed up in a line, readying themselves for the incoming enemy. Fighters and bombers were deployed, darting towards the oncoming armada with their weapons primed. The vastness of space stretched out before them like a dark sea, and in its depths, the enemy fleet moved forward like a monstrous tidal wave. "General, we're being targeted," an officer cried out. A barrage of fire streaked toward Earth's fleet. The first wave of shots slammed into the shields of several ships, sending shockwaves through their hulls. For a moment, it seemed as if the fleet might buckle under the intensity. But then something unexpected happened. A massive energy pulse shot through the heart of the enemy armada. It wasn't from Earth's ships, but from the very rift that had brought the reinforcements into this universe. The pulse hit the heart of the enemy formation, and for a split second, the entire fleet seemed to freeze. An explosion of light followed, and the darkness of space was illuminated by the aftermath. What in the world? Ramirez muttered under her breath. The pulse had created a breach in the ranks of the Empire's forces, and the opportunity for a counterattack had presented itself. Earth's ships wasted no time. Now, hit them with everything, Maria ordered, her voice booming over the comms. Focus fire on the broken formations. Don't give them time to regroup. The fleet surged forward. The battle began in earnest. Energy blasts collided with enemy ships, tearing apart hulls and causing massive explosions. Earth's fighters dove in and out, nimbly avoiding fire as they targeted weak points on the enemy dreadnoughts. Maria watched, her mind racing, as the tides of war shifted once again in their favor. But there was no room for celebration. The rift that had opened in the enemy fleet was closing fast, and soon they would be fully united and prepared to retaliate. This is it, people, Maria thought to herself. We either end this now or it's over for us. With a roar, the command ships of Earth's fleet moved in, unleashing all their firepower on the largest of the Empire's vessels. The space between them filled with light and debris as the weapons clashed, and the ships waged war in a furious dance. The enemy's biggest flagship was taking the brunt of the assault, but Earth's fleet was beginning to wear thin. I can't believe it, one of the officers exclaimed. We're doing it. We're pushing them back. Maria allowed herself a small, fleeting smile, but it was quickly replaced with a sharp focus. She knew the battle wasn't over yet. More ships were emerging from the rift, more Empire reinforcements appearing at an alarming rate. Brace for another wave, she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. All ships, prepare for the worst. Despite the chaos around her, Maria remained calm. She could see the larger picture, calculating every move. The fight was far from over, but they had broken the Empire's initial offensive. If they could hold the line, if they could endure just a little longer, Earth's fleet would survive this storm. And then, just as hope seemed within reach, a new voice echoed through the comms. It wasn't from Earth's fleet. It was from the heart of the Empire. General Ramirez, came the cold voice of the Empire's commander, his tone filled with malice. You have done well to hold your ground, but you are only delaying the inevitable. The true power of the Empire has yet to be unleashed. You will fall. Humanity will fall. Maria's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. We're not afraid of your threats. We've survived worse, and we'll survive you. You're in our universe now, and we don't back down. The screen went black. For a moment, the silence was deafening. Then an explosion rocked the fleet, followed by another and another. But General Ramirez was ready. The next phase of the battle was about to begin. The battlefield was now a chaotic symphony of light, explosions, and shuddering starships. Earth's fleet had held its ground against the first wave of the Galactic Empire's forces, but now, in the wake of the mysterious energy pulse, a new and more dangerous challenge emerged. The fleet's sensors detected a shift in the rift that had brought the enemy forces. It was pulsating, expanding, and something much larger, something far more menacing, was coming through. General Ramirez stood at the helm of her flagship, her fingers tight on the armrests of her command chair. Her mind was sharp, but even she couldn't hide the anxiety building in her chest. The battle had escalated beyond their expectations. The unknown force beyond the rift was not just another fleet. It felt different. As if someone, had orchestrated this invasion for a purpose far greater than just conquest. General, we've detected an anomaly, came a voice from the operations console. Something massive is emerging from the rift. It's not a ship, it's something else. Maria's heart skipped a beat. The last time the rift had shifted, it had unleashed the Empire's fleet. What could be coming now? The massive energy fluctuations continued to grow, and the space around them warped, distorting the stars in the distance. The fleet's systems flickered in protest as the rift pulsed one last time. And then, like a hammer striking the anvil, the massive object came into view. It wasn't a ship. It was a fortress. A towering, almost impossible structure stretching across the dark expanse of space. Its surface was covered in metallic plating and strange, shifting patterns that hummed with an energy unlike anything Earth's fleet had ever encountered. The sheer size of it defied reason, eclipsing everything around it. The fortress itself seemed to be a living thing, alive with its own dark power. Maria's jaw tightened as she observed it through the tactical display. It was the Empire's command center, far more advanced and dangerous than anything Earth had faced. This wasn't just a war, it was a test, and Earth's fleet was the sacrificial pawn in a game far beyond their comprehension. "We're facing a warship of unimaginable scale," she muttered. "All ships, fall back. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Her orders echoed across the fleet, but the enormity of the situation was sinking in. Even with their advanced technology, Earth's forces stood no chance against this behemoth without a plan, without a miracle. The fortress began to move. It wasn't slow, as one might expect from something of its size. It moved with precision and speed, its weaponry already coming online. Massive energy beams shot out from the fortress, cutting through space like a blade slicing through cloth. The energy beams ripped through Earth's fleet, decimating entire sections of the Armada in a single sweep. Ships exploded into violent fireballs, their debris scattered across the stars. "Report," Ramirez barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "General, we've lost a third of our fleet already," the officer at the comms console reported grimly. "It's like nothing we've ever seen before. We're being overwhelmed. The shields are failing." Ramirez didn't flinch. She was used to the weight of command, but even she couldn't deny the panic creeping into her mind. This was no longer about survival. This was about extinction. "We need a new strategy. We need to get inside that fortress," she said, the thought crystallizing in her mind. "Take out its core. If we can disrupt its power source, we might have a chance." But the question remained, how could they penetrate such an impenetrable fortress? The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the fleet's smaller recon ships, a nimble fighter known for its ability to slip past enemy defenses, had detected a weakness, a small, seemingly insignificant entry point in the fortress's outer layers. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. "General, we've located a possible weak point in the fortress's armor. It's a long shot, but if we can send a team inside, we might have a chance," the officer reported. Ramirez's gaze was cold as she looked out at the burning remnants of Earth's fleet. She didn't have the luxury of time to hesitate. "Prepare a strike team. We go in fast. This is our last chance." The team was quickly assembled. The best and the bravest were chosen, including Commander Harris, who had been with Ramirez from the very beginning. Their mission was simple: board the fortress, find its core, and destroy it before the fortress could wipe out the rest of the fleet. The strike team was deployed in a series of specialized shuttles designed to slip through the fortress's defensive grid. They shot through space with reckless speed, weaving between enemy fire as they closed the gap. The tension inside the shuttles was unbearable, each man and woman in that crew knowing that they were stepping into a death trap. "Commander Harris, we're almost there," one of the team members said, their voice tight with tension. "Once we land, we'll have to move quickly." Harris nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the dark void outside the shuttle's viewports. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for everything. Stay sharp, everyone." The shuttle sped toward the fortress, the energy pulses from the surface flashing around them like deadly fireworks. The small team managed to slip through the tight opening in the fortress's defenses, touching down in a hollow, darkened bay within the immense structure. They had made it inside. But as the shuttle doors opened and they spilled out into the belly of the beast, they realized the cost of their success. The interior of the fortress was even more intimidating than the outside, a labyrinth of metallic corridors, strange alien technology, and an overwhelming sense of malevolent energy. Their mission was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. And as the team advanced deeper into the fortress, Maria Ramirez's voice rang in their ears once more. "Keep going. We've only got one shot at this." The walls of the fortress seemed to close in on them as they ventured further into its heart. Whatever lay ahead, it was clear that Earth's survival rested on their shoulders, and theirs alone. The interior of the fortress was unlike anything Earth's soldiers had ever encountered. The walls shimmered with an eerie, otherworldly light, the material smooth and dark, as though absorbing the very essence of space itself. It was as if the fortress had been built not just for war, but to house something far more ancient, something that had stood the test of millennia. The air was thick with the scent of metal, and something deeper, something foreign. It wasn't just a place of war. It felt like a living entity, a creature of the void that had watched the cosmos for countless ages. Commander Harris and his team moved swiftly, their boots echoing off the metal floors. They were on a clock. Every second mattered. The pounding of their hearts matched the rhythmic hum that resonated through the structure. Every corner, every darkened corridor, seemed to hold the promise of deadly traps. And yet they moved forward, driven by the hope that Earth's survival depended on them. "We've made it this far," Harris whispered into his comms, his voice steady but betraying a hint of tension. "Stay focused. We get in, we destroy the core, and we get out." Simple. But nothing had been simple since they'd entered the rift. The team reached the first chamber, a vast room that seemed to stretch for miles. Towering machines stood in the center, their alien designs incomprehensible to the human eye. Each machine pulsed with unnatural energy, creating an unsettling harmonic vibration that sent chills through their spines. The machines were linked in a way that felt deliberate, as if the entire fortress was one gigantic organism, interconnected in some vast, unimaginable design. Is this their power source?" One of the team members, Private Miller, asked, his voice quivering as he gazed at the network of machines. "I don't know, but we're not here to find out," Harris replied, pushing forward. "We're here to stop it." They moved deeper into the labyrinth, the halls narrowing with each step. The silence around them was suffocating, broken only by the sound of their breathing and the soft hum of the fortress's systems. But as they pressed on, it became clear that they weren't alone. Strange, shadowy figures moved in the distance, their forms indistinct, but undeniably humanoid. They were watching. "Do you see that?" whispered Lieutenant Evans, a seasoned soldier with years of experience, her eyes scanning the shadows. "Stay sharp," Harris said, his voice low. "We're being watched, but we have no choice but to keep going." The figures didn't approach, but they followed. In the vast expanse of the fortress, they were never alone. The deeper they ventured, the more the sense of being hunted grew. It was as though the very walls of the fortress were alive, watching them, waiting for their every move. Finally, they reached a massive door, guarded by two towering alien figures. Their faces were obscured by helmets, and their posture was unnaturally still, almost like statues. But their eyes glowed, piercing the darkness with a chilling intensity. The soldiers froze, every instinct telling them to retreat. But there was no retreat. Private Miller, shaking with fear but determined, stepped forward, weapon raised. "What do we do now?" "Stand down," Harris ordered, his voice calm and calculated. "They're not going to let us pass without a fight, but we don't have the time for a fight." With a swift motion, Harris signaled for the team to get into position. They had only one chance to break through this barrier. As the alien sentinels approached, their weapons suddenly came to life, glowing with deadly energy. Harris didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger of his plasma rifle, unleashing a blast that sent the first sentinel stumbling backward. The second one reacted instantly, raising its weapon to strike. But before it could fire, Evans lunged forward, her rifle crackling with energy, and took it down in a single shot. "Move!" Harris shouted. They rushed forward, pushing through the door, only to be met by an overwhelming sight. The core. It was vast. An immense orb suspended in the center of a cavernous chamber. The orb pulsed with dark energy, a swirling mass of power that seemed to radiate from the very heart of the fortress. Around the core were countless systems, alien machines connected to it by complex energy conduits. "This is it," Harris said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "This is the heart of their power." Evans, ever the pragmatist, snapped him out of his reverie. "Let's destroy it before it destroys us." With grim determination, the team set to work. They planted explosive charges around the core, their hands moving with practiced precision. The air seemed to thicken as they worked, and the hum of the fortress grew louder, as though the very structure was aware of their intentions. The walls began to tremble, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated with increasing intensity. "We don't have much time," Lieutenant Evans yelled. "Get ready." As the last charge was set, Harris hit the detonator. The core's pulse spiked, and the entire fortress seemed to tremble in response. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending waves of energy cascading outward. The machines surrounding the core began to crack and splinter, their systems failing one by one. The fortress groaned, its walls screaming as they collapsed inward. The dark energy that had once pulsed so strongly began to dissipate, and the entire structure started to come apart. "Let's go," Harris shouted. The team ran as the fortress began to crumble around them. The walls cracked, and massive beams of energy shot out from the core's remains, tearing through the fortress's interior. They had no time to waste. They sprinted down the narrow corridors, dodging falling debris and avoiding deadly energy blasts. The fortress was dying, but it wasn't going to go quietly. The countdown to destruction had begun, and the only thing standing between them and death was a race to the exit. As they neared the shuttle bay, the walls of the fortress began to close in, the hallways narrowing with each passing second. The explosion had triggered a chain reaction, and the whole structure was collapsing. There was no turning back now. The team reached the shuttle bay, but their escape wasn't assured. The door to the hangar slammed shut, blocking their path. Harris gritted his teeth. He wasn't going to lose his team now, not when they were so close. With a desperate run, they charged at the door, firing their weapons in unison to cut through the locking mechanism. They could hear the walls around them groaning, as if the fortress itself was trying to prevent them from leaving. But they wouldn't stop. They couldn't. Finally, with a deafening crash, the door gave way, and they rushed into the shuttle bay. The team piled into the shuttles, just as the fortress erupted behind them in a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave rocked their vessels, but they held steady, zooming away from the crumbling structure as it imploded, vanishing into the void. As they soared back toward Earth's fleet, the team couldn't help but look back at the destruction they had left behind. The fortress was gone, its heart destroyed. But in its wake, they knew they had done the impossible. They had saved Earth, and they had proven that humanity, no matter how small, no matter how outmatched, could stand against even the greatest threats the universe could throw at them.